Tonight, second day of issues. The Fort St. John Hospital struggles with wait times. Transit changes. BC Transit makes it easier for those heading back to school. And Heatwave. Dawson Creek and Chetwynd beat their all-time temperature limits. Good evening and thank you very much for joining us. And we begin today with a second day of warnings for the residents of Fort St. John about longer than usual wait times at the hospital. The Health Authority, looking to help reduce strain on the emergency and acute care resources Monday and Tuesday at the hospital. Well, they're asking patients with less urgent care needs to instead visit their family doctors during regular business hours. Now, at the same time, Northern Health also saying that their online virtual health clinic suffered an information outage on Monday. The Northern Health Virtual Clinic was unable to access patient appointment information for the second day in a row Tuesday. As a precaution, those who were affected by the online outage are being asked to go to the closest emergency room. The virtual clinic is now back operating in its usual fashion. New technology coming to public transit in Dawson Creek and Fort St. John. And with back to school right around the corner, those with a BC bus pass will be able to use tap validation starting on September the 1st. BC Transit saying the modernization of bus passes allows them to create a universal rider experience. Before the change, riders had to show their pass to the driver for visual validation. The new system will be available on buses using the UMO digital payments system. The BC Transit says the new validation process will improve their understanding of how bus passes are being used. And for some families, back to school can be a financially challenging time. Well, that's where nonprofit agencies step in to fill the gap. But the BC Teachers Federation is saying tonight that families should not be relying on charities for their kids' school supplies. Demetra Margos reports.
The opening of a pencil case or zipping up their new backpack isn't something every child in the province gets to experience.
Whoop, they're falling down.
That's where Salvation Army Gateway of Hope steps in.
They can just focus on school and not worry about, will I have a pencil or a book or the necessary things I need today.
Dan Donkers, the operations manager, says the demand for their back-to-school fundraiser keeps growing.
We have about 750 that we're going to be delivering this Thursday.
Those 750 backpacks donated to the Langley School District are filled with binders, pencil cases, writing tools, and other supplies to set children K-12 up for the year.
It just helps them just have a good head start to the year so that they're ready to go.
But it's not just students in the Langley School District who are in need of help. The Surrey School District putting out a call to action. More than 100 schools have requested a total of over 2,000 backpacks filled with new supplies, an increase of 800 from last year.
I'd say it's unprecedented.
Carol Gordon, the president of BCTF, saying districts asking for what she calls basics in the classroom is unsettling.
We shouldn't be doing the funding that the province should be doing.
We reached out to Education Minister Lisa Baer. In a statement, she says the sector is facing pressure this year. Our government has protected core funding for education and have actually increased it by over $300 million. BC teachers are scheduled to go back to negotiations at the end of October after their current agreement expired at the end of June. But Gordon says funding for students is always top of mind.
We're continue to advocate for better funding for schools, better funding for classrooms so that students have their needs met.
Demetra Margos, CTV News, Langley.
Well, it's the framework for reconciliation with First Nations, and BC is the only province to have adopted the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. But a new poll is finding that British Columbians are at odds with the way the province has endorsed it. CTV's Rob Buffum has more.
British Columbians appear divided on DRIPA, the legislation BC passed in 2019 to align with UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
British Columbians are pretty attuned to that, and they're quite divided.
The legislation recognizes Indigenous rights and title and involves First Nations in decisions about public land and development. An Angus Reid poll shows 39% of those surveyed think it's necessary. Even more think the laws go too far in limiting provincial authority over land and resources.
Reconciliation of the rights of these groups that were here versus the challenges of land and development.
This Indigenous leader says he's not surprised by the poll.
BC has always carried a history of somewhat adverse relations towards the First Nations people.
Tension over Indigenous land title and rights was sparked after the poll was conducted, with the recent decision in Cowichan Tribes, the court granting Aboriginal title over land owned by the City of Richmond and the Crown that includes private property, a decision that triggered a quick appeal by the province. The Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation Minister responded to the poll.
I have to be sure that I'm being transparent with British Columbians. I'm upfront about what we're trying to do, which is about unlocking huge economic potential with First Nations people.
BC is the only province in Canada to pass UNDRIP legislation. The poll shows a majority want to see a referendum on that. 57% of NDP supporters in favor, and nearly 70% of BC Conservatives want a referendum.
If you look at the numbers, it suggests that it would be an interesting vote.
The province says there will be no referendum, but it has plenty of work ahead to provide clarity for Indigenous peoples and those concerned about the path to reconciliation.
Temperature records broken all across BC as the extreme heat continues to grip the province. Temperatures soaring to 41.3 degrees in Lytton on Monday, a community that suffered devastating wildfires. According to Environment Canada, that's the hottest temperature on record in Canada so far this year. And it wasn't the only hotspot in the province, with 16 other municipalities recording highs for the year. Today, Dawson Creek, Chetwynd, and Fort St. John all set temperature records. Dawson Creek and Chetwynd reaching 32 degrees. Relief from the heat isn't expected until the weekend, meaning fire crews will have to stay on high alert. Well, how to tackle the toxic drug crisis and respond to drug addiction are two of the most contentious issues in our province today. They're the source of much arguing in public, but behind the scenes, it seems the attitudes and responses are evolving. Tonight, Penny Daflos begins a special series diving into public health policy and harm reduction efforts.
With its open drug use and squalor, Vancouver's downtown east side has drawn disdain and disgust for decades. But illicit drug users in British Columbia are more likely to die behind closed doors. When fentanyl first arrived in our province, 5 people overdosed at this Coquitlam home, with similar scenarios unfolding daily. Supervised consumption sites have saved thousands of lives, yet continue to generate controversy and political fireworks.
They're not safe. They are unsafe injection sites. They are drug dens.
We have hundreds of people on waiting lists looking for treatment.
At all levels of government.
Meant to be a contact point so we can get people into further treatment.
There are people on the streets that should be in treatment. They should be in recovery.
Year after year as the death toll continues to rise.
To the Premier, given his abject failure of harm reduction, will you start an inquiry?
I couldn't feel more urgent about this issue. We've got thousands of people dying.
We're constantly evolving our services to meet the needs of the time, and certainly the toxic drug crisis has required us to do this in a continual way.
It's not just fentanyl in the illicit drug supply, but a toxic soup of random chemicals. Supervised consumption sites help keep people alive until the day they may be ready to enter treatment. That process is now changing with a phased rollout across BC.
Historically, there was a sense of futility. I'll call and they're going to have me wait 4 weeks, no matter what my situation, no matter what my needs. And that is no longer the case. We now have a prioritization system, and we have a way of matching people to the right service at the right time so that nobody's having to have that really long wait without answers.
It's a matter of attitude and approach and understanding. And as to the people that are so hostile to drug-addicted people, I would say, what are you so hostile about?
Drug use is a complex issue with a constellation of potential policy responses and factors that can shift depending on how the political winds are blowing. The causes, however, remain consistent. In the next installment of this series, we examine why it may be more accurate to think of toxic drug deaths as deaths of despair. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Vancouver.
A group of medical students from the University of Alberta are heading to the community of Grand Prairie to complete their education. As CTV's Merrick Takash tells us, the new program is aimed at increasing the number of doctors in rural Alberta.
Megan Hopkins is getting fitted for a new white jacket. She's a first-year medical student at the University of Alberta.
When the opportunity came up to do medical school in my home community, it was an opportunity I was very excited for.
192 students are starting medical school at the U of A this year. 30 of them are enrolled in the Northern Alberta Medical Program. Students will finish their education at Northwestern Polytechnic in Grand Prairie, Hopkins' hometown.
You kind of get to be a jack of all trades. I found when I was doing some things in the city, I personally really loved being able to go back to rural and get to do a little bit of everything.
The U of A created the program to address shortages in the medical field, particularly in rural Alberta.
The benefit of this program is not only graduating a larger number of students total, but it connects those students to different places where they'll be providing more broad care across the entire lifespan of patients and their families.
This is the first time the university is sending first-year medical students away to complete their studies.
The farther away you get from a central place like Edmonton, the greater the breadth of learning, the greater the breadth of care provision that the doctors and nurses need to provide to those patients.
Hopkins and her classmates will begin their studies in Grand Prairie next week.
My biggest hope for the program is to be able to show others why the North is so great and why rural is awesome.
Northwestern Polytechnic will host the students while the U of A will be responsible for program delivery and academic accreditation. Merrick Takash, CTV News, Edmonton.
New numbers tonight from Canada Post show the Crown Corporation was hit with its biggest quarterly loss in history. Canada Post lost $407 million in the second quarter alone. It comes after parcel revenue and volumes fell 37% because of labor uncertainty. More than 50% of the year-to-date losses happened back in the month of June. That's when labor uncertainty was at its peak. In May, the union initiated strike action by refusing to work overtime following a 32-day national strike late last year. If you bought dining room furniture from the Brick in the past couple of years, you might want to listen up. Health Canada has published a recall for Lars-branded furniture due to excessive levels of lead. The product includes a counter chair, wood countertop, and metal base tabletop center glass insert, as well as a counter table. All items were sold between June 2023 and July of 2025 and came individually or as a 5 to 7 piece set. Health Canada says black coating on the product's legs and metal base contained an excessive amount of lead. As of August the 15th, there have been no reports of incidents or injuries in Canada due to the products. Mark Carney was busy on the international stage today, committing to extending Canada's NATO mission in Latvia for 3 years. The Prime Minister is also pursuing new economic and military cooperation with Europe, something that includes a big-ticket item. CTV's Abigail Beeman explains.
Prime Minister Mark Carney tours a shipyard. The German-Norwegian consortium TKMS is pitching Canada to buy its submarines.
Our subs are quieter than Canadian Snowfall, but tougher than a player in the Stanley Cup final.
In Berlin, the government announced it's narrowed its search for up to 12 new submarines to 2 companies, this one and South Korea's Hanwha.
It's not about buying the big shiny object from the showroom floor. It's about how you are going to sustain that capability over what will probably end up being 30 to 40 years.
Canada's submarine fleet is so old it will be decommissioned by 2035. Senior government officials describe the situation as having some urgency.
We need to be able to have year-round fleets in all 3 coasts under quite demanding conditions. So that's how the field narrows quite quickly.
In addition to tricky technical requirements, the government wants a purchase as massive as this one to have an equal investment in Canada.
Really positive indication with this announcement today, which is atypical for the way Canada's generally approached big procurements, and based on a project budget that could get into like $100 billion range. This could end up being the single most expensive and largest defense acquisition that we've ever undertaken.
TKMS's CEO said they were open to building in Canada, which would be a first.
The customer is always right? So if they want or demand for special, let's say, reasons to build them in Canada, we would also be able for that.
Wednesday, the Prime Minister will meet Canadian troops here in Latvia. Tonight, he announced he will extend the NATO mission Canada leads here by another 3 years. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Riga.
All right, as we mentioned, record-breaking temperatures across the Peace region today. Stay tuned. I'll be right back after the break with weather.